It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. A beautiful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Hey, how many of you remember that song by Mr. Rogers? Let's talk about the audacity of our neighbor. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Listen, I am recovering from the weekend. We had our family reunion. Shout out to the Freeman family reunion this past weekend. And I've just about lost my voice, it seems, or at least my voice is an octave deeper. But so happy to see my family. Believe it or not, this was the first time we've gotten together since COVID. So I am happy that our family reunion is back on track. Can't wait to see everybody next year. So it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Although here in Texas, it's been raining off and on. But who remembers that song? It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood by Mr. Rogers. I remember growing up with that song. Does that tell y'all how old I am? Anyway, for you young people out there, go and Google Mr. Rogers, right? So I'm walking through my neighborhood last week, and I have lived in my neighborhood for 20 plus years. And throughout the years, neighbors have come and gone. And as I walked by, many of the homes were locked up tight. Still, others were out watering their lawn, and I waved to say hello. But only a few were outside. And I realized at that moment, I don't know a lot of my neighbors. Is that typical in neighborhoods these days? We have a lot of beautiful neighborhoods here in Texas and the Dallas area. And I'm wondering how many of you know your neighbor? And I wonder if they were to be in need, would I run to their rescue? Do I love them enough, though I don't know them, to be there when they are in need? When emergency medical vehicles zoom by my house in my neighborhood, I'm going to be honest. I peek out the window. I may step out in the driveway. It just depends on how many, emergency vehicles, police cars, fire trucks come out. But would I be there in their time of need? And that has bothered me. And so that's why I want to talk about the audacity of our neighbor. Will we, oftentimes say will you, but will we take a bold risk to know our neighbor, to love our neighbor, to care for our neighbor, to be there when our neighbor is in need? And so, of course, the parable of the Good Samaritan in Luke, I believe in chapter 10, is where I went. And I'm sure you have most likely read this parable or heard it over your church pulpit. So you have this most likely Jewish man who has been robbed. He's been beaten and left for dead on the other side of the road. And so you have a priest and a Levite who both saw the wounded man, but passed by him on the other side of the road, meaning they could have been on the same side, but when they saw this man laying on the side of the road, they crossed over on the other side and kept walking. Does that sound familiar in this day and time? In this day and time, we don't even have to be wounded on the side of the road, and people will cross the street to the other side. Okay, I'm not going to go there, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So many times God brings our neighbor right to our feet and we ignore them. Can I get an amen on that one? So then you have this Samaritan, and we know that the Jews and Samaritans didn't get along. But you have this Samaritan who saw this man that had been wounded and beaten on side of the road, and he had compassion for him. The priest and the Levite, they had no compassion, but the Samaritan bandaged up his wounds, put him on his animal, took him to a hotel. Okay, in the Bible it says to an inn, but took him to a hotel, stayed with him that night, and the next day he asked the hotel front desk, okay, the innkeeper, to continue to care for the wounded man. He gave the front desk money and said, do whatever you have to do to care for him, and when I return, I will repay you. So this meant the Samaritan not only bandaged up his wounds, took him to the hotel, cared for him that night, left him with the hotel front desk to continue to care for him, and then said, I'll be back. How many times do we stop to help someone? We care for them, but how many times do we say, I'll be back? Did you see this handoff between neighbors? The Samaritan and the innkeeper. The weight doesn't always have to be on one person. It takes each of us working together to take care of our neighbor. Both of us, all of us. The responsibility doesn't weigh on one person. The innkeeper didn't go out looking for who he could help. This wounded man was brought right to him. And though I don't know all of my neighbors, I don't know everyone that lives in every house in my neighborhood, but what I can do is be the innkeeper. When Christ sends someone my way, I'm not going to cross to the other side of the street. I want to be the innkeeper. Tony Evans put it this way. Your neighbor is the person whose need you see, feel, and are able to meet. Mercy is compassion to a person in need. When you see a legitimate need, let me say that again. When you see a legitimate need with which you emotionally connect and which is within your capacity to address, you are called in the name of Christ to demonstrate compassion. That sounds like a Tony Evans statement. Let me read it one more time. When you see a legitimate need with which you are emotionally connected and which is within your capacity to address, you are called in the name of Christ to demonstrate compassion. That's a good statement right there. The audacity of our neighbor. And so my merry moment is love your neighbor. It's just that simple. Love your neighbor. So this is what's on my replay this week. And since I quoted Tony Evans, let's listen to our replay by Anthony Evans, his son. And it is the song Fighting for Us. And it says, you are not flesh and bone. You are not weak or slow. You're everything brave and bold. You're fighting for us. You are not distant and cold. Your heart's not angry and closed. And even in ways we don't know, you're fighting for us. You won't hold back when it comes to your children. You fiercely defend us till we stand delivered. You're fighting for us, always fighting for us. Y'all have a good week. I am so glad you tuned into the show today. And remember, Christ died for you, was resurrected for you, is returning for you, all because he loves you. Now, all you have to do is trust, confess, and believe in him. Y'all have a good week.